Joining me now is one of the men at the center of the federal budget battle. He is the chairman of the House Budget Committee, GOP Congressman Paul Ryan. Congressman, welcome back, sir.
Hey, thanks for having me, Sean. Good to be with you.
All right. Well, first of all, we're dealing with this gets a little complicated because we're dealing with last year's budget.
Right.
We run out of money this Friday unless this deal goes through. And this is only going to be a 2-week extension. And to do the 2-week deal, you said, well, we need $4 billion in cuts.
That's right, because we're not interested in actually rubber stamping these elevated spending levels that President Obama pushed through Congress 2 years ago. The kind of spending increases he got on government agency budgets, 24% on average. You throw stimulus on top, is an 84% increase. So what the president's budget tries to do is lock in all those big spending gains. We don't want to accept that. We're not looking for a government shutdown, but we're not going to rubber stamp these spending levels. We want spending cuts in return, and that's what this is all about.
Right. All right. So I was in D.C. interviewing Speaker of the House Boehner, and right down the hall, you were giving a tutorial, you were educating, you were informing a group of incoming freshman congressmen about the budget. And you were kind enough to share with me the information, and I sat in and I watched for a little bit. And one of the things you were pointing out in this is what the projected growth and how much this is going to cost. I'm going to put up on the screen, this is the path ahead, how our skyrocketing, you know, the debt will be hit 800% of GDP by 2080 if we continue on the current policy. Explain that chart.
This is a chart offered by the Congressional Budget Office. This just tells you this is the debt projections we have ahead of us as a country. This assumes very low interest rates for the future. So it's actually a conservative estimate. And it shows you that we're running into a tidal wave of debt so great that, according to the Congressional Budget Office, not only will our children inherit a lower standard of living, they say the economy absolutely crashes in a tailspin in 2037 if we stay on the path we're on. These projections, by the way, don't even count Obamacare and its fiscal effects. So this is what America is looking at right now, according to the Congressional Budget Office, and every other independent fiscal authority says the same thing.
Right.
So I'm trying to bring members of Congress up to speed with just how dire our fiscal situation is. That's why we were so stunned that the president gave us a budget that proposed to do nothing about this other than to double down and stay in the same direction. Well, we're going to have a debt crisis unless we preempt it.
Yeah, all right, so the president punted. The president said we have to deal with entitlements. He didn't deal with entitlements. He didn't want to take them on. I wonder politically, do you assume, as I do, that he did that purposefully so that he can then say, oh, the Republican cuts are draconian? By the way, also he assumes growth that I don't think is possible in the next 2 years, almost 5%.
Right. So in order to make his budget look somewhat respectable for the year 2015 or 2017, he assumes extremely high economic growth in the year 2013 when he's imposing a massive tax increase on the economy, on small businesses, investment and job creators. So it's not a budget that anybody agrees with. Even the Washington Post said he punted. So why is he punting? I don't know. Everybody thinks it's what you just said, that he's trying to lay in wait to pound on us for proposing entitlement reforms.
Right.
You know, I don't know what the motivations are. I'm not going to speak to that. I don't really care. We owe the country a choice of a different future. We owe the country a political party that will stand up and actually take on the country's challenges before they get out of our control. And that's why we got to tackle this deficit problem, this debt problem, and come up with a budget that actually solves our fiscal problems. And if you look at that debt chart, the problem is that not that we have too many taxes, it's spending.
Yeah,
so we're going to go after spending and the programs that give us all the spending increases.
Right. Just to be clear so everybody understands, the Democrats never passed a budget last year, even though they had control of both houses and they had a Democrat in the White House. So when we're talking about the debt ceiling, that's for this current fiscal year to run the government through October at some point. So this is only going to be a 2-week extension. And then we're back to square one. We're facing another government shutdown, as I think the Democrats wanted. Now, after that, in April, you're going to propose your first budget since you've been in Congress, correct? And you will deal, in that budget, will you deal with entitlement reform, Social Security, Medicare? And, well, there's only 2 ways, for example, to deal with Medicare, Social Security, means test, and raise the eligibility age, right?
So that's what I've always been proposing in all of my budgets. The commission proposed those 2 reforms in its recommendations on Social Security. We're going to go after the drivers of our debt. And the drivers of our debt problem are the entitlement programs. The good thing about doing it now and early is you don't have to change benefits for anybody in and near retirement. These changes occur prospectively to younger generations like yours and mine, the X generation on down. So if you do this now, you can do it smart. You can do it without affecting current seniors and prospective changes. And we do plan on tackling these drivers of our debt, yes.
So I will have paid in my whole life, and maybe if I'm lucky, I'll get one payment the week before I die. But it's not about me. But let me ask you this, because let's go back to this year's budget, because that'll happen in April. But we're running out of money, and if they don't sign on to it, we're out of money on Friday. If they do sign it, that's only 2 weeks of time they're going to buy us. You came up with another chart on how money and spending is allocated. So we'll put that up on the screen, and you can explain this.
Okay, so what you see is a pie chart, and you have two triangles that are separated from the rest of the pie called discretionary spending. What we're talking about right now with the continuing resolution, all this government shutdown talk, is over just those two slices of the pie. Discretionary spending, that's government agency budget spending. Half of it's for domestic government agencies, other half of it's for defense spending. That's about 40% of our budget. That is what we're talking about with the government shutdown for the rest of the fiscal year. The other slices of the pie, which is technically called mandatory spending or entitlement spending, that's 60% of the government. That is not in the system we're talking about now. That's not up for grabs. That's not going to be changed. That's not a part of the debate over the government shutdown. That is the purview of the budget, which we will produce in April. The debt limit, that will get hit later in the spring, probably sometime in May. And that is because we've borrowed so much money from all the spending that took place earlier that we're up against our credit limit. And so that's a third problem that we have to deal with just this spring.
Unbelievable. All right, Paul Ryan, the money guy for the Republicans. We're going to continue to watch. Appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Sean.